If you're struggling to stay productive while working from home, this episode is for you. Natacha and me, we are sharing today our personal toolkit of productivity hacks that have transformed our work from home experience for the better. Hi, I'm Sophie Van Tigelen, online course expert and strategist for established female solopreneurs.
Hi, everybody. I am Natacha Guyot. I am an intuitive guide and a story weaver, and I help women and found folks live, work, and play in alignment with less shame and self-judgment.
And we are both women solopreneurs and service providers building our businesses online. And every month we are sharing practical business strategies, technical resources, and everyday life tips to help you create, grow, and thrive your own online business. And today's topic is all about how to work smarter from home so you get more stuff done. From optimizing our schedule to setting up the perfect workspace, we are sharing real-life, tried and true strategies we use to boost our efficiency and stay on top of our game when working from home.
And not losing our sanity.
And in this video, we are covering 5 tips that made all the difference for us in our everyday life. We'll start with knowing and optimizing your peak hours. So here it's all about identifying when your brain is at its best and reserve those time for your deep dive work. So this has been very important in my solopreneur journey because at the beginning, I was not really aware of when was the best time for me to do my deep dive work. And I really had to be aware of when my brain was at its best and then block those times to do my best work. Is this how it's working for you, Natacha?
Oh, definitely. And I think there's a lot of pressure because you see all the people, all the gurus be like, wake up at 5 a.m. No, wake up at 4 a.m. and do everything. And I'm just like, I'm a night owl. I'm not a morning person. And I have no desire to be. When I have to get up early, whether I was going to school or other jobs or anything, and it's like, okay, I will do it. But as a solopreneur, I'm just like, my calendar, whatever I have on it, my tasks basically are between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Now there's some give or take depending, but like what I am planning is within this range. I will never have a meeting for the most part before 11 a.m. because I want to have had my breakfast. I want to have my cup of tea. I like not to rush in the morning. Mm-hmm. My brain works better. Middle of the day, afternoon, that's when like my deepest work. That's when I'm going to really be smartest. And also like, sometimes we like to have our schedule, but every once in a while, there's going to be like extra work, or maybe you're finishing a big project, or you're going to have a lunch, or something. Some people, it may work to be like, okay, I'm stopping at the normal time and I will start early tomorrow. For me, that would be a recipe for disaster. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to have dinner and then I'm going to get my second win and just finish. I try to avoid doing that, but I also recognize, especially, at solopreneur, things happen. And if like every couple months or, less than that, I need to really finish something, you're going to see me doing that between like 8 and 10 p.m. And then I will try to sleep in the next morning because for me, that's how my brain works. You don't want me to be like, I'm going to get up at 7 a.m. and do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's where we differ. And it's good. We are not all built on the same mold. You are a night owl, I'm an early bird. So that's when I feel like at my best, in the morning. The hours between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. are like gold for me. So I schedule nothing during those times. But then by 4 in the afternoon, I'm done. My brain shuts down. When you actually, you wake up by that time. That's what I think. And then what I do for those time, I keep tasks that are low level energy, that don't require, 100% of my brain, or self-care. That's when I try to do my exercise routine, actually.
And you also bring up a really good point about, when we do, less brain energy, like task or something, like that's another thing I want to point out is that many people say you should hit the ground running, with your big deep work. I'm a weirdo. I'm owning that. It's like typically my first 30 to 60 minutes, I'm going to catch up with our brain cells requirement tasks, like maybe I'm going to catch up with my emails, or I'm going to do a LinkedIn post or respond to comments or something, because I need the warm up. And then that gives me my time to have my first or second cup of tea. And then I'm just like, okay, I got the warm up. I can hit the ground running and do the deep work, but I do not start straight into the deep work.
That's very good. And that's all about awareness, knowing when you work best and what it takes for you to get in the zone, right? All right. So leading to our second hack, and it's around our top 3 tools to stay organized and efficient. So here I'm going to start by telling a little story. So we are going to share the top 3 tools that we're both using. But for me, it wasn't always that way. I was really struggling with scheduling all my tasks. So I was an old-fashioned, old school, and I was like, I go on, my paper calendar, and I write everything in there. I write my task, my appointments, and then I had problems because, for example, I go out, I go to the doctor, I need to schedule my next appointment, but I don't have my paper calendar with me. So I would schedule it at the doctor's office, come back home and realize I have an appointment with a client, or I have a deep dive that is scheduled. So I had conflicts like this. And then another thing is I was using Calendly to schedule Zoom calls with people. But then for some reason, and because you are going to explain why, what was the problem after, but people would just schedule their appointment whenever they wanted. And they would appear last minute on my schedule, on my Google Calendar. And I was, where is this coming from? Something was wrong. I was obviously doing something wrong. And that's where you come in.
Yes, no, and the thing is that I understand being old school and having a paper planner. I mean, I'm doing the show and tell this month as well. It's like I still have one. I do not use it anymore, but up until, I would say, end of last summer or in the fall, I was still juggling, like trying to do most things in my paper planner because old school. But as soon as I started to have people who could, schedule stuff with me, I was just like, this is not doable. So I completely shifted gears and completely used Google Calendar, but in a very as easy as possible way. I know that now it can do a lot of nifty things like it has task or anything. Like I don't still understand how to use task. Every single thing I use on my color-coded Google Calendar is using meetings or out of the office are the only 2 features that I use on Google Calendar. And what happens is that even for my tasks, like, blocking my deep work or figuring out what I do in the day, I'm still using the meeting feature. And what I also really like is that because my Google Calendar is fully synced with Calendly, including like the times I'm available for specific type of calls, like my intuitive readings that are only available like 3 days a week in specific times, how long ahead they can schedule. Like for this type of really client work, they have to schedule at least 2 days ahead because I don't want to like be in something and then rush into it. And I also I like how you can have the buffer or anything. And at the same time with Google Calendar, what I love is that when you create like a meeting, or especially in my case, like another task, like whether it's deep work or something that is less, that is more admin stuff, I may decide if it shows up as busy, as in people cannot book anything on top of that, usually my deep work. But if it's something that is an admin task or something that I can move around, I'm going to leave it free. So if I have a client that wants to go there, then they can.
So I'm gonna just stop you here to highlight what you just said, because that is something that I didn't know I could do with my Google Calendar. So I was not using it fully, but when you told me that you can sync Calendly with your Google Calendar, and that you can mark some task in your Google Calendar as being busy, meaning that people cannot then come and schedule something during those times. That was like, that changed my life.
I'm so glad because without it, like I joke now, I couldn't live without my Google Calendar, and I own that because no matter whether it's just for the meetings or like the other stuff I do, and I have like 6 different colors in our color code stuff, but it's also, I'm a visual person. I look at my Google Calendar, I'm just like, okay, there's a ton of purple. Well, purple is all my tasks, all the deep work or other things I do. Then I have different colors for like what are like events, general events or my one-on-one calls. And then even when it's client work, it's also another dedicated color, just so at a glance, I can be like, oh, this is how my week is looking like.
And then the third tool. So we mentioned Google Calendar. We mentioned Calendly, which is a scheduler for those who are listening and don't know what it is. And then there's Zoom. That's the third tool that we are both using a lot in our business as service providers. Do you want to talk a little bit about Zoom?
Oh, sure thing. Like, I think when we talk about Google Calendar, Calendly, and Zoom as like free tools that we absolutely use, it's also like in terms of you need to make sure that the important integrations, like which, part of your platforms or software are going to talk to each other, that you absolutely need them to talk to each other. Whatever tools you use, I think that's where I would invite anybody to be like, okay, what is my non-negotiable? What take do I need to be talking with each other to minimize the brain work and just be like, okay, it's doing its stuff most of the time. And for Zoom, it's basically that this is what I use for multiple things. I'm going to use Zoom for my client work. I conduct like 90% of my client work online. And also, for connection calls, or, sometimes you're preparing an event or have co-working session, or even recording videos like this one. We are using Zoom right now to record. And I really just need to make sure that if, somebody sign up with me, that they get the Zoom link automated and I don't have to think about it. So this is really why I need Zoom to be talking to Calendly and Google Calendar at all times. And also just a quick note about Calendly is that one thing I do appreciate, I know other schedulers work like that, but Calendly makes it really easy to either have a lot of different types of connection calls or, meetings or anything that are not requiring payment. But for example, all my intuitive readings have the payment baked into Calendly. So when people book, they do the booking, they answer any questions that may be necessary, and they pay all within Calendly. They don't have to go anywhere else.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I run my payment through my online course platforms, but you don't have to. You manage to integrate a form of payment with your Calendly, which I think is really fabulous. One last thing about Calendly before we move on to the next tip is don't give out your Calendly link to the entire world. So I started like this because I thought, I want to get on chats with everyone. That's how you find business, right? Oh my gosh, I was overwhelmed. And I had all these people who were scheduling whenever they wanted because I didn't know about Google Calendar and the busy setting at the time. And I was spending my days in sometimes useless conversation, chat. My advice is don't give it up to everybody freely to the world. Send it to people who you know are going to be potential future customers.
I will heartily agree. I do not even have a connection calls link anymore. That's not even one of my types of meeting available in Calendly, because I add that as well all the way to January or February this year. And even so, even with making it just certain times, it was still like, I was not as intentional with my time and the people I was speaking with. So now I'm just like, okay, if I really want to, either we agree on that, we're going to schedule something manually, or if they have a Calendly, I'm using theirs. But I'm just like, I need to have at least a little bit of conversation with you, or that you come like with a really strong referral from somebody I know and trust.
And you said the words being intentional about your time and how you use it. That's gold. All right, so we are moving on to the third tip, and it's about setting work boundaries. Yes, it's a thing. It's not just personal or relationship boundaries. There's also boundaries around your work, and they work both ways. Let me explain this. So when you work from home, it doesn't mean that you are available all the time, around the clock to anybody that's out in the house. It could be your spouse, your partner, your family, your kids. So you have to put boundaries because it's really easy to get distracted by chores, pets, or family needing attention. So you want to put boundaries around your work time, and they work both ways, meaning that people have to respect your work time, but you also have to stick with the boundaries that you put on yourself, on your work time. And I know we differ a little bit on this, so I'm going to be interested for you to share your story. But when my kids were small, I stayed at home. I was not working corporate. I raised the kids. And so I was the mom and I was available all the time. My job was to take care of the kids, right? So, and if somebody needed me to do anything, I would just drop everything I was doing and run to do it. So that was my mindset of being a mom at home. So when I started my business, I really had to put myself in the mindset that, hey, I'm building a business. This is not a hobby that I can just drop and go do this and go do that or drive someone there or there. So that's why I say you have to have boundaries both ways, and you also have to respect your work hours. But I know that you're kind of a little bit of a workaholic, so it's the other way around.
Yes, it's recovering perfectionist, type A, the whole 9 yards. It's I actually need to have better boundaries to stop working, but I'm getting better about that. Yeah, for example, one thing I would say is that in my case, so I'm married, my spouse works from home Monday and Friday. So that means that one thing I try to do is that most of my calls or video recordings are typically Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday while he's at the office, because it just easier for everybody. But I may have certain events on Fridays, like technically today we are recording on a Friday because life happens. And I can also have tarot clients on Fridays as well in specific hours. And in that case, if we're both from home, it's going to be like, hey, what does your day look like? And, really having open communication about when we have meetings. Our offices are on each side of the hallway. So if we have closed door, we can have 2 meetings at the same time without it being really bad. But we do our best to really communicate and to avoid having the overlaps. Worst case scenario, it happens, not the end of the world. But if we can, move things around, usually me being an entrepreneur can be a little easier to move a couple things around, unless it's client work. In that case, that's client work. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that really knowing what you want and, the boundaries you want to have, like one really big boundaries I do have at this point is I avoid working on the weekends. The only thing that may have me work on weekends is it happened a couple times. My spouse would, do overtime during the weekend, but maybe finish earlier on another day or something. So I'm trying to move things around sometimes when I have the capacity without, ignoring my own needs and wants for my work. But again, it really boils down to open communication. It's like have a solid baseline, and if things move a little bit around, like have the flexibility. But again, boils down to open communication. I'm going to say with anybody that is in your home, of course, I do understand if you have really young kids, it, may be a little more challenging. And also, I'm a cat mom. Right now, I'm not raising any human, but I do have 3 cats that I'm actually shocked they're not, showing their butts all over the recording now. But I have one of the cats that is the black floof that sometimes he hates when my husband is at the office. And he's going to be screaming and explaining to me that my husband is not here. And most of the time, it kind of works well, even if I'm recording, it's usually, settling down or half in my face or on my desk. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But like yesterday, I recorded 2 videos and it was in complete mode of, oh my God, my Papa Shah is not home. And I was like, I love you dearly, Bob, but I'm going to put you in the room on the other side of the house, close both doors and record.
Oh my God, you did it? You did that? I can't believe it.
I did that. I was just like, 95% of the time, my cats, even if they're participating, are okay. But even like, it's like, okay, I love you. Go snooze on the bed. You have 3 of your favorite toys. You'll be fine. But I cannot have you scream bloody murder right when I'm trying to record.
Well, I'm proud of you because I know that your cats are often making appearances on your video, and that's super cute. I'm glad to hear and very proud of you to hear that you put it in 2 rooms over. Of course, if you have small kids, it's not something that you can do. It's going to take a little bit more strategizing. But the bottom line is to help you and to remind you to have boundaries around your work, to protect it, and also to step up and putting the hours. That would be more like for people like me who were not used to having a very structured schedule, work schedule. So there.
And for the workout colleagues like me, having clear boundaries, like, okay, just for those who may be like, I have difficulty stopping work. For the past 3-4 months, I literally have a block on my calendar with its own color, with chill in all caps, starting at the end of my traditional workday all the way to sufficiently late in the evening that I know I will not be working at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Do I overstep it sometimes? Yes, I do. But it has been helping, at least as a visual reminder, but hey, remember not to work 16 hours.
All right. So the next tip is talking about how to stay motivated and in work mode when you are working from home. Because, I mean, I'm not feeling super productive every day, all day, every minute. And sometimes I have a hard time getting into or staying into the work zone. So what are you doing for this, Natacha?
First thing is that I currently do not have a laptop and most of my work requires a computer. So I know that compared to you, it's like my change of scenery is within the house, but the only place where I really work is my home office where I am right now. But at the same time, I have a few things that I can do when I'm just like, okay, it's really not happening right now. Usually I'm going to get up, leave the home office, go walk. Maybe I'm going to step outside, or maybe just, if it's raining, stretch my legs around the house, go make another cup of tea, snuggle with my pets for a while. Like, it's kind of just really like having a sharp, stepping away from whatever you're doing and kind of be able to have a reset. And at least sometimes I cannot see my computer for 5 minutes. Sometimes on days when it's really more challenging, I may need a 30 minutes break, but it's always knowing how long, at what time you need to get back to it. And sometimes just 5 minutes is going to do the trick, sometimes a bit longer. But I find that also moving my body, if it's just stretching the legs or something, can really help me get the gears flowing back, because sometimes it's just like not thinking about work at all. Sometimes it's just like thinking about something, letting it, marinate just a little bit, and then, okay, boom, coming back to the computer and doing the thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm working on a laptop, and for years, my trick to get into the zone, if you want, was to go work in coffee shop. I just love to leave the house and go work in a coffee shop. It was like my office. I was going to the office. It was also almost a ritual. And I knew that when I would get there, I would get my little coffee because I'm a coffee drinker, would get situated, would be my pen and my calendar. And then I would be in the zone to start working. And that has always worked really well for me. And so I would work the mornings in coffee shop, and then I would come back home for lunch and work from home in the afternoon, which strangely I was able to do, but not in the morning. Don't ask me why. It's the way it is. And then, well, what happened is that I live in a small town in Colorado, and we don't have a lot of coffee shops. And during the pandemic, and actually even after, those coffee shops became so popular, like more and more people, freelancers, self-employed people like you and I, would go and work in coffee shops. So it started to be really crowded. You couldn't find a spot. You had to start to wake up earlier and earlier in order to get there first and get a good spot. So it's not working for me anymore because my favorite coffee shop has become way too popular and it's overcrowded. So I had to find another way to get into the zone. And I will talk about this in our next hack. But basically, I had to reorganize my entire office. But if you have a coffee shop that you like in your neighborhood, for me, it has always really worked well to, be in the zone. Moving on to the last hack, and it's about setting up your workspace. So whether it's revamping your office or just setting up a little corner in your living room, creating a workspace that inspires you to be productive is key. So I was explaining in the previous hack that I used to work in coffee shop to get in the zone. That didn't work so well for me anymore because it became overcrowded. So what I did is I actually completely reorganized my office. I didn't have to buy anything new, actually. It was just moving the furniture around and placing myself in front of the window. I have like a beautiful window right there, gives me like perfect light for all videos. So now now I love my office. I used to not love my office, but now I love my office. I love to come in here in the morning. It feels comfortable, cozy, and I don't have any distractions. So, and my essentials for me in the office are to have a good light, which I have with the window, to have a good chair. That is very important too, especially when you have to work for hours. And then I like to have some plants. You don't see them, but I have hanging plants there that just grow towards the window. So how is it for you?
First of all, I remember when we were talking about your home office revamp like a few months ago, because I remember your office, the old version, when we started talking last year. And I 100% agree that, I mean, you and I are lucky to have a dedicated home office, but even when you don't, it's like finding the spot that works for you regardless and finding what is the essential for you. Like you were mentioning, I think that's really helpful. And so in my case, yeah, I do have a home office. That's one of my favorite places in the house. And it's not been a one and done either. I mean, if you had seen my home office, like even 2 years ago, it did not look the same. And this is why, I mean, you cannot see everything, but it's kind of really nice to like add the little bits or, build a book collection and sometimes literally have pieces of equipment you have not tried out yet, like a brand new or over desk tripod I've not had yet, but it's sitting there. It's like, it's daunting me every time I'm on camera, but it's really finding what works for you. And I love that you say that it's comfortable and cozy, because I find that if you love your home office, then you're excited to be there as well. And that makes a huge difference for me. And some of my non-negotiable, it's like I'm also in front of a window and I love having the natural light. This is really the most flattering. And it's also just nice. Sometimes, we're talking about getting back in the zone, being able to look at outside. Can be really, sometimes you just need the little daydreaming, and just look for 30 seconds, 2 minutes outside. And it's like, okay, boom. That was a very easy, even if you were in the middle of something, that can be a mini reset in itself. And another non-negotiable for me is having a lot of space on my desk. At this point, I do have a huge desk. It's actually a Swedish 19th century desk that I've had for years. That thing is so sturdy, I can stand on it. It's not gonna budge. I love this. But it's big enough that I can have my monitor. I have a shelf with more notebooks, a lot of decks. And I still have the space for at least one cat to be there. And next to it, there's a small coffee table where I can have another cat. And then there's a chair where either, my husband, if sometimes, if I'm on a break and he's from home, can just come by and say hi, or if we're catching lunch together. It's basically leaving space for the cats. Because as we were talking earlier, the cats like to be there. And granted, one of them prefer being on top of my desktop, and every once in a blue moon, shut it down. But usually it's like, I can lure you towards another spot that are very comfy with blankets. I don't even have my desktop on my big desk. I have a dedicated console where I have other space. It's like, I really love being able to have the stuff I need, like within reach. But on the other hand, I'm going to say, I know many people praise having 2 monitors. I cannot work with 2 monitors. For some reasons, I have a few ideas why, based on earlier health issues I had, but it's like, I need a single monitor.
Mm-hmm.
A big one, but a single monitor that is at the right scale for my eyes and my brain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I just love the view of your office. It looks, again, also so cozy. I see some books, some memorabilia, some plush little animals, and so is that a rock over there? Maybe I don't know.
Yes,
but
there is a rock. Yes, if you're looking at that, that's actually a rock from Burgundy.
Ooh, okay. So France.
Yes. And it's also like one thing that I know I mentioned it, but something is like, you don't have to remodel all in one go. And a lot of that like was added over the years, but even like, for example, the armchair that you cannot see that I was mentioning earlier, That was an armchair that my husband had for years, and we just bought a new coverage for it, so it could be right in the colors for it. But like, I was super happy. Like, I hated seeing the beige lampshade on my background because it really blended too much with the closet door. 2 years later, I bought the new lampshade. So it's not also like, it can be, adding the little bits and pieces over time. And like you were saying, like just reworking everything without buying anything new is also a possibility. I've also moved things around over time.
This might not be like the first productivity hack that might come to your mind when you think about how can I increase my productivity? But actually having a place that you love being in and that is comfortable, that you feel safe in it, and that you are not constantly distracted. Like, I would not recommend the kitchen table, that you can isolate yourself a little bit. It makes all the difference. All right, so this is it. We shared with you our 5 best hacks. So of course, not everything is going to work for everyone. So you're going to have to experiment and see what works for you. But we would love to hear from you. So what are your top challenges when working from home? And what is your workaround? Which solution did you find to be more productive? So we would love to hear from you. Drop us a comment below the video. And let's find solutions together. Thank you, Natacha. Once again, we had a wonderful conversation, you and I.
Thank you for having me as always. It's always a joy to see like what we have in common, because the challenges are often common, but it's really nice to see how the solutions, are different from one person to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channels, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more content like this in the future.